keys jingled softly in my hand as I walked up the stone path to my dream home, the one I had spent 25 years saving for. Not a rental. Not a project. Mine. Every inch of it was designed by me, built from my own sweat. Every piece of furniture carefully chosen, worth $130,000 in total. But the moment I opened the door, I knew something was terribly wrong. The air didn't smell like new paint anymore. It smelled musty, old, and when I stepped into the living room, my breath caught in my throat. Gone were my sleek white couches, the Italian oak tables, the crystal lamps that made the whole space shimmer at sunset. In their place, torn couches, sticky tables, a sagging recliner that looked like it came from a thrift store dumpster. And then my phone buzzed. A message from my sister. Laura got a photo. Her kids were jumping on my expensive white sofa, chocolate stains smeared across the cushions. Under it, her message read, "Thanks, sis. Mom said you wanted us to have it." Such a blessing. I froze. My hands started shaking so badly the phone nearly slipped from my grip. This wasn't a mix-up. This was betrayal. And not the first one either. For years, I'd been the independent daughter, the one who didn't need help, the one who quietly paid everyone else's debts. I thought this house would finally be my fresh start. Instead, it became the perfect stage for another family heist, signed, sealed, and approved by my own mother. But what I didn't know then was that this theft was just the beginning. Behind it all lay something darker, something planned long before a single sofa was ever moved. You think you've heard family drama before? Wait until you learn what my mother did next. Before we go further, if stories about real families, betrayal, and finding strength through heartbreak speak to you, subscribe to When Family Breaks. Because sometimes, the stories that hurt the most are the ones that heal us in the end. Now back to my story. The police would later tell me it was one of the strangest cases they'd seen. A crime wrapped in family love, money, and lies. But that came much later. First came the discovery that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my mother, and reveal a secret hidden for over 30 years. So tell me, what would you do if your own mother stole your dream and smiled while doing it? Because by the time I found the truth behind her smile, it was already too late to undo what she had set in motion. I grew up in a house where silence was safer than honesty. If my mother was pleased, the whole world was calm. If she wasn't, even the wallpaper seemed to flinch. My sister Laura learned early how to survive it. She was the charming one, the baby everyone adored. When she laughed, Mom lit up like Christmas morning. When I spoke, Mom sighed, as if my very voice inconvenienced her. I learned to earn affection the only way I knew how, by fixing things. Grades, bills, broken plans, broken people. If something fell apart, Rachel would fix it. That became my role in the family, dependable, invisible, replaceable. Maybe that's why I worked so hard. I thought success could buy respect. Every promotion, every late night at my design firm, every check I sent to help Laura after her divorces, it all felt like proof that I was worth something. But now, standing in the ruins of my living room, staring at the filthy couch she dumped in my home, I realized I had bought everything except boundaries. I sat down carefully, the springs groaning beneath me, and pressed my face into my hands. The smell of mildew and cheap perfume clung to the air. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I swallowed them down. Crying never fixed anything. It only gave my mother another reason to call me dramatic. Still, my body shook. How could they? How could she? When my phone rang again, I almost didn't answer. But the name flashing on the screen, Mom, pulled me back. Her voice was cheerful, like she was calling from a picnic. "Sweetheart, did you see the surprise? Laura's new place looks wonderful now." My voice cracked. "You gave her my furniture." "Oh, come on, Rachel. You don't need all that luxury. You live alone. Your sister has the boys to think of. I bought that furniture, Mom, with my own money. It's mine, a boss." Then that sigh I'd heard my entire life. "You're being materialistic again." "I thought you outgrew that." Materialistic, that was her favorite weapon. "Turning my hard work into guilt," she went on, words dripping with false concern. "You know, if your father were alive, he'd say the same thing. Family should share." I wanted to scream. Instead, I said quietly, "Dad's gone, Mom, but I'm still here, and you don't get to take from me anymore." She chuckled softly. "Oh, honey, don't be silly. I just borrowed it for Laura. You'll thank me one day." When the call ended, I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing, and then something snapped, not loudly but deep inside, like ice cracking underfoot. I opened my laptop and pulled up the home security footage. Empty files, every single clip from delivery day. Deleted. The system had been manually wiped. My breath caught. Mom hadn't borrowed anything. She had planned this. That realization hurt more than losing the furniture itself. It meant she'd looked me in the eye that morning, promised to help, and already knew what she was going to do. I pushed my chair back and started searching for the delivery invoices. Maybe I could trace the movers, prove something. Then I saw it, an unfamiliar withdrawal from my joint renovation account. $8,000, a signature authorization. Linda Hayes, my mother. She didn't just take my furniture, she took my money, too. The betrayal sat heavy in my chest, but beneath the pain, something colder began to stir. Resolve. I grabbed my keys and headed out the door. Laura's house was only 15 minutes away, and I knew exactly what I'd find there. The drive blurred by, pine trees, wet asphalt, the hum of tires. When I reached her street, kids were playing on the sidewalk, chasing a ball under the weak Oregon sun, and there, through her front window, I saw it, my sofa, gleaming like a hostage under the light. I rang the bell once, twice. Laura opened it with a big smile. Phone in hand, her makeup was perfect, her tone sweet. "Rachel, did you see my live stream? Isn't the place gorgeous?" I stepped inside without answering. Every inch of her living room screamed of me, my style, my colors, my work. Even the throw pillows I'd ordered custom were there. "You're streaming with my furniture," I said softly. She blinked. "Mom said you were fine with it. Did she also say she could drain my account?" Her smile faltered. "She said it was for the housewarming, for the family." "The family?" My voice trembled. "Or just you?" Behind her, the boys peeked out from the hallway, chocolate still smeared on their faces. I couldn't even be angry at them. They didn't understand. They were just children repeating what they'd been taught, that Aunt Rachel always fixes things. For a moment, I almost let it go. Almost. But then Laura added almost casually, "Mom said you'll get it all back once she's done with the estate paperwork." "Estate?" I frowned. "What estate?" Laura froze. The air shifted. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. "What are you talking about?" I asked. She bit her lip, eyes darting toward the kitchen, where Mom's purse sat on the counter. Then she whispered, "I'm not supposed to say." That single sentence chilled me to the bone. Something else was happening, something much bigger than a stolen sofa. And for the first time in my life, I was done being quiet. Before I walked out, I looked back at her boys, still watching me with wide eyes. "Take care of them, Laura," I said softly. because soon things are going to change. As I stepped into the cold evening air, the sky cracked open with a low roll of thunder. Maybe it was just the weather, or maybe, after 45 years of silence, the storm had finally found its way to our family. If this story has you holding your breath, make sure you subscribe to When Family Breaks. Sometimes the truth doesn't just hurt, it sets you free. The next morning, I drove back to Laura's house before the sun even rose. The rain hadn't stopped all night, and a thin fog clung to the trees like ghosts refusing to leave. My mind played the same question over and over. What estate? What was she hiding now? When I turned into Laura's driveway, her living room lights were already glowing. Through the window, I could see her holding her phone on a tripod, voice bright and cheerful. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm revealing my new living room transformation. She was live streaming with my furniture. My stomach twisted as I watched her lean against my marble coffee table, showing off the sleek lines and the expensive finish I had worked years to afford. She laughed and said, "Big shout out to my amazing sister for gifting me this set. She's such a blessing." I didn't knock. I walked straight in. The camera was still rolling when she froze, that fake smile flickering like a candle in the wind. "Rachel," she stammered. "I was just filming," I said, finishing her sentence. "For your fans. Using everything I bought." She glanced nervously at the comments flooding her phone screen, the little hearts still floating upward. "Can we talk off camera?" she whispered. I reached out, pressed the stop button, and the room fell silent except for the rain outside. "Talk," I said. Laura sighed dramatically, the way she used to when we were kids and caught lying. "Mom thought it would be nice," she began. "She said you wouldn't mind. You've always been so generous, I repeated. "Laura, that furniture cost more than your car," she shrugged. "You make good money." "I don't. You have no kids, no husband. It's just stuff." Something inside me broke a little more. It wasn't just about money. It was about how little they valued me. "Did Mom tell you to say that?" I asked quietly. She hesitated. Then in a rare moment of honesty said, "She said you owed me." "Because of Dad," my throat tightened. "Owed you what?" Laura's voice dropped. "Because he left everything to her. And she said she only kept it from you to protect you. That you'd get your share when you were ready." I froze. "Share of what?" "The inheritance," she said softly. "Dad's estate." The words hit like a punch. "All these years, Mom told me Dad died with nothing left but debt. She'd even cried about how she had to sell his car to cover hospital bills. But if there was an estate, if there was something left, then my entire life had been built on a lie." I felt the walls closing in, the air turning heavy. "Laura, do you even know what you're saying?" She shook her head quickly. "I don't know everything. Mom just said once she sells your lake house, we'll all be fine. The boys' tuition, the mortgage, it's all part of the plan." "My house?" I whispered. "She's selling my house?" Before Laura could answer, a new voice cut through the tension. "Girls," my mother's voice, calm and commanding, filled the doorway. She was standing there, holding an umbrella, her coat dry despite the rain. Of course she was here. Of course she'd come to control the narrative before I could. She looked around like a queen inspecting her kingdom. My. Doesn't this place look lovely now?" "Laura, you've outdone yourself." "Mom," I said through clenched teeth, "you stole from me." She smiled, sweetly, innocently. "Stole? That's a terrible word, Rachel. Family doesn't steal. We share. You wiped my security footage. You took money from my account. She raised her hand, cutting me off. "You don't understand. You've been so busy working, you forgot what matters. We needed help. Laura's boys needed help. You can't take it with you, sweetheart. You mean I can't keep what's mine? Her expression hardened. Watch your tone. For a moment I saw it, the mask slipping. The same coldness I'd seen as a child when I dared to say no. But this time, I didn't back down. You lied about Dad, I said quietly. You lied about everything. Her jaw tightened. Don't start this again. Start what? The truth? I stepped closer. What else are you hiding, Mom? The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. Even Laura looked uneasy. Then, in one smooth motion, Mom reached into her purse, pulled out an envelope and tossed it onto the table. Inside were glossy printed photos, my house, interior shots, a for sale sign staked in the yard. Her voice was calm as ever when she said, a real estate friend owed me a favor. The market's hot. It's time to move forward. I stared at her, disbelief turning to fury. You're selling my home without asking me. Her lips curved. Oh, Rachel, you'll thank me one day. I've already lined up a buyer, Laura gasped softly. Mom, not now, she snapped. Rachel's overreacting again. She always does. It was surreal, like watching my own mother gaslight me in real time. Rewriting the story as if I were a character she invented, I picked up the envelope and ripped it in half. I'm done letting you decide what I deserve. Her eyes narrowed. You wouldn't dare cross me, Rachel. Watch me. I turned and walked toward the door. Her voice followed, sharp and cold. You'll regret this. Family is all you have. I paused just long enough to look back. No, I said softly. Family is what you're supposed to protect, not destroy. The rain hit my face as I stepped outside. But I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running from her. I was walking away. Halfway to my car, I heard Laura call my name. I turned, expecting an apology, but she just stood there, eyes wet with guilt, whispering, She'll never stop, Rachel. She'll find another way. I nodded. Then I'll be ready. The drive home was silent. But my mind wasn't. If Mom had gone that far, taking money, selling my home, hiding an inheritance, then this wasn't just betrayal. It was war. And if you've ever had to stand up to someone you love, you know that's the hardest kind of war there is. If you're still here with me, don't forget to subscribe to When Family Breaks so you can follow how this story unfolds. Because what came next would shake everything I thought I knew about truth, love, and what family really means. That night, I didn't sleep. Every creak in the house sounded like a whisper from the past, reminding me of everything I'd ignored for years. The lies, the guilt trips, the quiet control. By dawn, I'd made up my mind. If my mother could play this like a business transaction, then I would too. No more emotional arguments. No more begging for decency. It was time to protect myself. I called my lawyer, not a family friend. Not someone Mom could manipulate, a professional. Her name was Angela Brooks, and she didn't flinch when I told her the story. She's trying to sell property that's legally yours? Angela asked, typing quickly. Yes, without my consent. And she used your joint account to move money? I nodded. $8,000, maybe more. Angela looked up from her screen. Rachel, your mother's name is still on that account, right? Only because she helped me co-sign the renovation loan years ago. I paid every dime back, but I never removed her name. Angela sighed. That gives her access. But if she's been moving assets under your name, that's fraud. Let's start there. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. Someone was finally on my side. We went through documents, bank statements, property deeds, and then something I hadn't seen in years, a power of attorney form. Angela's brow furrowed. Rachel, did you know this gives your mother full control over your financial decisions if you're deemed incapacitated? My stomach dropped. What? That's impossible. I signed something like that when Dad was sick. It was for his medical care, not mine. Angela turned the page toward me. This one isn't about your father. It's about you. Signed 5 years ago. I blinked at my own signature. Familiar, yet slightly off. I didn't remember signing it, and then it hit me. 5 years ago, Mom helped me refinance the house after a small kitchen fire. She'd brought paperwork, said it was just for insurance purposes. I never questioned it. Angela's voice was steady. If she used this document, she could legally make major financial moves in your name, including selling your home. The room spun. It wasn't just manipulation anymore. It was strategy, planned, documented, legal on paper, immoral in truth. I felt sick. Can we undo it? I whispered. Angela nodded. We'll file a revocation immediately. But Rachel, she leaned forward, her tone softening. Has she ever done this before? Used paperwork or guilt to control your choices? I almost laughed. A dry, humorless sound. All my life, I said. When I left her office, the rain had stopped, and for the first time, I noticed the world didn't look so gray. It wasn't hope exactly, just clarity. On the way home, I stopped by the nursing home where my father had spent his final years. The nurse at the desk smiled sadly when she saw me. Mr. Hayes always talked about you, she said. Said his daughter had the same stubborn streak he used to have. Her words made my chest tighten. Dad had been quiet, gentle, a man who never argued, even when he should have. When Mom controlled his every decision, he called it keeping the peace. But peace built on silence isn't peace at all. It's surrender. His room was empty now, but the staff let me sit there for a while. The air smelled faintly of lavender and time gone by. I could almost hear his voice, soft and tired. Don't be like me, Rachel. Speak up before it's too late, I whispered back into the quiet. I'm trying, Dad. I really am. When I stood to leave, the nurse handed me an envelope. This came last week, she said. Forwarded from the legal office. It's addressed to you. Inside was a printed email chain, one that had been accidentally copied to the nursing home's administrative account. It was from my mother. The subject line read, Lake House Sale, Tuition Transfer Plan, and the message was clear. Once the property is sold, move the funds into Laura's account. The boy's education comes first. Rachel doesn't need to know until after the closing. There it was. Proof. She'd been planning to sell my home to fund Laura's life. Again. My name, my work, my sacrifice, all just a means to her end. I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my hands ached. But under the rage, a new feeling grew, determination. For 30 years, I'd been repeating the same pattern, over-giving, over-explaining, over-forgiving. Every argument ended with me apologizing. Every betrayal ended with me helping them again. Not this time. When I got home, I started pulling everything, photos, receipts, contracts, into neat piles, evidence of my own life, finally in my hands. The next morning I called Angela again. I'm ready, I said. File whatever you need to file. End her control. She smiled through the phone. It's already in motion. The revocation goes into effect today. That night, for the first time in years, I slept through the night. But peace didn't last long. Because 2 days later, I received an email from a home appraisal company. The subject line read, Lake Property Evaluation, Appointment Confirmation, scheduled by Linda Hayes. She was still moving forward, still pretending she had power. And I realized something chilling. If my mother couldn't control me through guilt or money, she'd find a new way. I looked out the window at the reflection of my home, the one I'd built with my own hands, and whispered, You picked the wrong daughter this time. If you've ever had to break a pattern that's lasted a lifetime, you know how terrifying freedom can be. But you also know it's the only way to heal. And if this story speaks to something inside you, subscribe to When Family Breaks, because sometimes the moment you stop fixing everyone else is the moment your real life begins. The invitation looked harmless enough, handwritten in my mother's perfect cursive, sealed with one of her rose stickers like she was sending out tea party invites, not invitations to war. Family dinner. Let's clear the air. Clear the air. That was Mom's favorite phrase. It never meant peace. It meant control. Still, I went. Not because I wanted to, but because it was time. Time to stop playing her game and start ending it. The night of the dinner, I wore black. Not out of mourning, but because armor doesn't always shine. When I arrived, the house smelled like roasted chicken and manipulation. Laura's laughter floated from the kitchen. Nervous and high-pitched, Mom's voice followed, smooth, steady, rehearsed. I stepped inside and placed a folder on the dining table. "Oh, Rachel, you came," Mom said brightly, wiping her hands on a towel. "I was afraid you'd still be angry." "Angry?" I smiled faintly. "No, Mom, I'm prepared." She hesitated at that word, her eyes flicking toward the folder. "Prepared for what?" "For the truth." Laura peeked from behind her, chewing her lip. "Rachel, let's not do this here." I turned to her. "You said that about Dad's funeral, remember? Let's not ruin the moment." Then about the house loan. Then about the inheritance. Funny how the timing is never right to tell the truth in this family. Mom's tone sharpened. "We don't need drama tonight. We're here as a family." "Exactly," I said, flipping open the folder, which is why I brought receipts. The first page slid across the table, a copy of the power of attorney revocation. Stamped and notarized, Mom's smile faltered. "What is this?" "It's the end of your control over my life," I said. "As of yesterday, you have no legal authority over my property, my finances, or my decisions." Her voice rose. "You can't just—" "I already did." I laid down the next paper. A printed email. Her email. Her hand twitched as she recognized it. "The one you sent about selling my house and wiring the funds to Laura's account." Laura gasped softly. "You told me that was all approved." "Don't you dare take that tone with me," Mom snapped. "Oh no," I said quietly. "Please, keep talking. It's good for the recording." I pointed to the small black device on the table, a voice recorder blinking red. Mom froze, color draining from her face. "You wouldn't—" I already did that too. For a moment the only sound was the tick of the grandfather clock behind us, marking each second between lies. Then Mom laughed, brittle and forced. "You always were dramatic, Rachel. Do you really think anyone will care? You'll just embarrass yourself." "Maybe," I said, "but at least I won't be the one under investigation." Laura's eyes widened. "Investigation?" I looked straight at her. "Yes, Laura. Bank fraud, property tampering, wire transfer theft. All of it. You were part of it whether you knew or not." Her face went pale. "I didn't—" Mom said— "I know," I said, softer now. "I know you wanted to believe her." "We all did." Mom slammed her hand on the table. "Enough! You think you can destroy this family over a few misunderstandings?" "No, Mom," I whispered. "You destroyed it when you made love conditional." Her mouth opened, but no words came. Then, to my shock, my father's voice spoke from the doorway. "I think it's time you stopped." "Linda," we all turned. Dad stood there, frail but upright, leaning on his cane. I hadn't even known he was in town. Mom's expression hardened. "Robert, stay out of this." He shook his head. "Not this time." He walked forward slowly, pulling something from his jacket, a small flash drive. "I thought you might need this, Rachel." Mom's face drained of color. "Robert, what did you do?" He handed it to me. "Your mother records everything. Every phone call, every email. She thinks she's protecting herself. But sometimes truth protects better." I looked at him, tears stinging my eyes. "Dad, why now?" He smiled sadly. "Because I finally realized silence is just another kind of betrayal." The room fell into chaos. Mom shouted. Laura cried. Dad sank into a chair, exhausted. But I stayed calm, steady. For the first time, I wasn't the scared daughter. I was the adult in the room. I gathered the documents, slipped the drive into my bag, and stood. "This dinner's over," I said. "And so is your power over me." Mom's voice turned cold, almost unfamiliar. "If you walk out that door, don't come back." I paused at the threshold, looking at her, the woman who gave me life and taught me fear in the same breath. "Then I guess we're finally even," I said quietly. "Because you lost me years ago." I stepped into the cool night air. The sky was streaked with the faint glow of lightning in the distance. Behind me, the argument continued, voices sharp and breaking. Like glass underfoot, I didn't turn back. Some battles don't end in victory or apology, they end in freedom. But as I reached my car, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You think this is over? Let's see what the court thinks about your mental stability." "Mom!" I stared at the screen, disbelief melting into grim understanding. She wasn't done. She was filing for guardianship, claiming I was mentally unfit to manage my life. For a moment, the world spun again, like it had when I found my living room empty. Only this time, I didn't break. I just whispered to the night, "Game on," because now it wasn't just about furniture or money, or even pride. It was about reclaiming my sanity, on paper, and in truth. If you've ever been told you're crazy just for standing up for yourself, you'll understand this part of my story. And if you don't want to miss how this fight unfolds, make sure you subscribe to When Family Breaks. The truth doesn't hide forever, and neither will I. Courtrooms have a strange smell, a mix of paper, polish, and nerves, the kind of place where truth and lies sit side by side, waiting to see which one will speak louder. I never thought I'd see my own mother across a courtroom, her pearl necklace gleaming under the fluorescent lights, her hands folded neatly on the table, as if this was just another Sunday church meeting. She had filed a petition, claiming I was mentally unstable, that I was a danger to myself, that she needed legal guardianship for my own protection. Her voice had always been her sharpest weapon, and today she wielded it like a sword. "My daughter has been under tremendous stress," she said sweetly. "She's imagining things. She believes I stole from her, that I want to harm her." It's heartbreaking, truly. Every word dripped with practiced sadness. The judge nodded politely, jotting notes. Then it was my turn. I stood slowly, every muscle tense, every breath heavy. I wanted to scream, but instead, I did something far more dangerous. I stayed calm. "Your Honor," I began softly, "my mother isn't protecting me. She's protecting herself." I could feel her glare, hot as sunlight on my back. I took a deep breath and handed a USB drive to my attorney. "Angela, play it," I said. The courtroom filled with sound, my mother's voice, clear and cold. "Once the property's sold, wire the funds to Laura's account. Rachel doesn't need to know. She'll thank us later." There were gasps. The judge's pen stopped moving. Mom's smile froze, the mask cracking just a little. But I wasn't done. Angela brought up the next file, a copy of the forged power of attorney and my mother's email correspondence with the real estate agent. Each piece stacked on top of the next. Evidence, motive, intent. Layer after layer, the curtain fell. For the first time in my life, I saw her cornered, not by emotion but by fact. She turned to the judge, desperate now. She's twisting everything. I only wanted to help. You know how ungrateful children can be. The judge raised a hand. Mrs. Hayes, that's enough. Her voice cracked. You don't understand. I gave her life. And you tried to take it back, I whispered. The judge called for order. The gavel struck once, sharp and final. But before the session ended, the door at the back of the courtroom opened. And there he was, my father. The man who'd spent years fading quietly into the background. The man Mom had convinced everyone was too frail to speak, now walking toward the front with a small stack of papers in his trembling hands. Your Honor, he said softly, may I say something? Mom's face drained of color. Robert, no. But he kept walking. He handed the judge a statement. It was short, only a page. But it was everything. He'd written that he had witnessed Mom's manipulation firsthand, that she'd hidden assets, rewritten legal forms, and coached Laura into false testimony. And then came the recording. His voice, shaking but clear, captured weeks earlier on his nurse's phone. If anything happens, tell Rachel I saw what her mother did. I was silent too long. Silence fell across the courtroom, like a curtain after the final act. Even the judge took a long pause before speaking. This is no longer a guardianship case, she said. This is a case of fraud and attempted property theft. Mrs. Hayes, you are hereby ordered to cease all access to your daughter's accounts and property. Effective immediately, Mom's hands trembled. Her perfect composure shattered into disbelief. How could you do this to me? She cried, turning to my father. After everything? He looked at her with eyes I barely recognized. Steady, tired, free. Because it's the first time I've done something for our daughter instead of to her. Laura broke down then, sobbing into her hands. The boys weren't there. Thank God. I think she finally realized the damage we'd all been living under. As security escorted Mom out, she twisted toward me one last time. Her voice cracked like thunder. You'll regret this, Rachel. Blood is blood. I didn't respond. I just stood there, hands shaking, but my heart finally still. When it was over, the courtroom emptied, but I stayed behind for a while. The sunlight coming through the tall windows felt different that day. Warm, real, earned. Angela placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. You did it, she said. I smiled faintly. No, I whispered. I finally stopped letting her do it. Later that afternoon, we drove back to my lake house. It felt strange seeing the furniture back in place, like the pieces of my life had returned home before I had. The same white sofa, the same crystal lamps. But they didn't feel like possessions anymore. They felt like proof that I'd reclaimed what was mine, both in the world and in my heart. The next morning, I woke to a knock on my door. It was Laura. Her eyes were red, makeup smudged. In her hands was a small box. Inside were the keys to my mother's storage unit, and a note in her handwriting. I don't know how to fix this, but I want to try. I didn't say anything for a long time. Then I nodded. Trying is a start. That evening, the news ran a small headline. Daughter wins fraud. Case against mother. Assets restored. But that wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was standing in my living room, sunlight spilling across the cream sofa, and realizing the woman staring back from the window reflection. She wasn't broken anymore. If you've ever fought a battle you never wanted, just to keep what was already yours, you'll understand the kind of peace that comes afterward. Quiet, heavy, real. And if you've made it this far in my story, make sure you're subscribed to When Family Breaks, because even after justice, the hardest part was still ahead, learning how to live in the silence that comes after the storm. The week after the court ruling, my house felt different, quieter, lighter, like the air itself had been waiting for that verdict. I walked through each room slowly, fingertips brushing along the furniture, the walls, the windows. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was proof that I had survived. On the coffee table sat a small wooden box, the one Laura had handed me outside the courthouse. I hadn't opened it yet. Some part of me wasn't ready. Maybe because every time she tried to make amends, Mom always had another trap waiting inside. But that night, with the moonlight spilling across the floor, I finally lifted the lid. Inside were two things, a tarnished brass key and an envelope with my name. Written in my father's careful handwriting, my hands trembled. The key was familiar, heavy, old-fashioned, the kind my father used for his workshop. I could almost hear the sound it made when he locked the door, smelled the sawdust that clung to his clothes. I unfolded the letter. The paper was yellowed around the edges, the ink slightly smudged, as if it had been carried for years before finding its way to me. Rachel, if you're reading this, it means I wasn't brave enough to say these words while I was still here. I've watched you fight battles that no child should have to fight, and I've watched your mother take more than she ever gave. I was silent because I thought silence kept the peace, but peace built on fear is just another kind of prison. You are the only one who builds, not takes, and when you're ready, this key will open something that belongs to you, not her, not me. Just you. Tears blurred the words. It was like he was speaking to me from beyond the years of silence we both endured. The next morning, I drove to the small town where he'd kept his old workshop. It had been locked since the day of his funeral. Dust covered the windows, and ivy had begun to creep along the sides of the door. The key slid into the lock as if it had been waiting all this time. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of cedar and memory. Blueprints still hung on the corkboard, sketches of furniture he never got to finish. In the corner, a wooden chest sat beneath a faded top. I opened it and found another letter, this one from his attorney. It confirmed what I'd feared and hoped. He had left a separate trust, one that Mom could never touch. Inside the chest was the deed to a small interior design studio downtown, a business. My father's unfinished dream, his legacy, waiting for me to continue it. I sank onto the workbench and cried, not the angry tears I'd known all my life, but something softer, something healing. For years, I'd believed my worth was tied to what I could give others. Now I understood what my father had been trying to say. Legacy isn't about inheritance, it's about courage. The courage to stop the cycle that breaks you. Over the next few weeks, I began restoring the studio. I repainted the walls, polished the floors, and brought in the same warm lighting I'd used in my own home. Luna, my closest friend and business partner, came every day with coffee and music and laughter. Even Laura came once, quietly sweeping the floor, her face pale and humbled. She didn't say much, but she stayed until the work was done. When we hung the new sign, the name came to me easily, Hayes and Daughters, not as a tribute to the pain that came before, but to the strength that followed, because no matter how broken we were still here, rebuilding. On opening day, the shop was filled with people, neighbors, clients, old friends. The air buzzed with soft chatter and the smell of fresh wood and coffee. And as I looked around, I saw faces I hadn't expected. Laura's boys standing shyly by the window, holding a bouquet of white lilies. "Grandpa said you like these," the youngest said, his voice small. My throat tightened. "Thank you," I whispered, pulling them both into a hug. They didn't know the whole story, and maybe they didn't need to. They just knew their aunt loved them, and that was enough. Later that afternoon, my father's old lawyer stopped by. He handed me a small framed document. It was the official record of the court's final decision, revoking my mother's rights to my assets, sealing the case. He smiled gently. "Your father would be proud, Rachel. You gave his silence a voice." When the crowd finally left and the sun dipped low, I stood alone in the quiet shop. I ran my fingers over the wood grain of the counter. Smooth, solid, honest. This place, this piece, was everything I'd ever wanted. Through the window, I could see the reflection of my lake house in the distance, bathed in gold from the evening light. I thought about my mother then, where she was, what she might be feeling. Anger, shame, regret? I didn't know. But for the first time, I didn't need to. Forgiveness didn't mean letting her back in. It just meant letting her go. That night, sitting on the same cream-colored sofa that once symbolized betrayal, I realized it had become something else entirely. A monument to everything I'd reclaimed, every scar, every boundary, every ounce of self-worth. I lifted a glass of wine, smiled to myself, and whispered, "To Dad, to truth, to finally being free." The phone buzzed softly beside me. A message from Laura. "The boys made something for your store. Can we stop by tomorrow?" I typed back 3 simple words. "Yes, just you." Because healing doesn't mean pretending the past didn't happen. It means creating something better from its ashes. As I looked around the quiet room, a sense of peace settled deep in my chest. The furniture gleamed under the lamplight. The curtains swayed softly, and for the first time in my life, the word home finally made sense. If this story touched something inside you, make sure you're subscribed to When Family Breaks. Because sometimes the hardest stories to tell are the ones that heal us the most. Sometimes healing doesn't come with grand gestures or perfect apologies. It comes quietly, in the moments you finally feel safe in your own home. In your own skin. My story began with stolen furniture, but it ended with something priceless. Peace. The kind you build yourself piece by piece, when you stop waiting for your family to change. If you've ever rebuilt after heartbreak, you know, freedom isn't lonely. It's sacred. Thank you for listening to my story. Subscribe to When Family Breaks for more journeys like this. Because even when family breaks, you can always build again.